Welcome to the lesson, everyone. This one will deal with different ways to approach a two-chord jam, and this topic came from a question I got from a Patreon supporter. Would love to see a post on strategic approaches to tray jamming in general, and use a couple of simpler 2 to 3 chord jams, and how tray makes runs up and down the neck, focuses on specific notes or chord changes, builds tension, etc. I really like that he used the word strategic in his question, because even though we're improvising and jamming, we definitely want to have a plan of some sort. So in this lesson, we'll try to combine the 3 main points: how to make full use of the fretboard, how to hit specific notes over the chord changes, and lastly, how to create some extra tension and color in our playing. So let's begin with how to make full use of the fretboard. One thing that we can definitely use and take advantage of to help us use the whole fretboard are the 5 positions of the pentatonic scale. Since we're playing an E minor to A7 jam, an E minor pentatonic will work really well, but the E minor pentatonic is really a derivative of G major pentatonic. So I'm going to start with first position of G major pentatonic and go through the 5 positions, and then we'll look at how we can connect them. Now, to connect all those together and really widen our range of the fretboard, we're going to use a slide as a device to connect each one together. And we'll start with the first position of G major pentatonic and go from there. Now here's just another way we can combine little bits of each one of those positions and string them together and get one big run. Or you could do it like this. So again, I'm using slides as a device to get from one position to the next, and we can definitely play around with different ways to do it, different combinations of notes, different patterns, but the main idea is that we connect these different modes together and expand the fretboard. Next, let's take a look at how we can hit the right note at the right time by thinking, hearing, and seeing in a more chordal way. let's look at some options for chords we can use in arpeggio form as we do our lead. So our chord progression is an E minor to an A7. Now, I did add some extra harmony in there just to lay the grounds for if we want to have some more tension and some more color to our playing. Just hearing that different harmony can sometimes inspire the player to bring that out in their playing. So the chords we can really draw from are the obvious ones first are E minor arpeggios and A7 arpeggios. Now for the E minor, we can do E minor 7 or E minor 6. Either one will be cool. So I'm going to map both of those out in a couple different spots. Now this first arpeggio I'm going to do is an E minor arpeggio, but it's really a combination of an E minor and a B minor. At least that's how I'm thinking of it. And actually in the rhythm part of the playthrough that I did in the beginning of this video, I combined one guitar playing an E minor kind of 9 vibe and then another one doing a B minor. It just creates a cool texture. So we start out on 2nd fret of D. So really what it ends up being is just in E minor 9. There's a benefit to thinking of that as one whole thing, but there's also a benefit to thinking of it as two separate things combined. More on that in a little bit. Now if we shift up a little and want to make use of another position of the guitar and want to plug in some similar kinds of sounds for E minor, we could do an E minor 7 really easily like this. Or we can make it an E minor 6, because in the context of this jam, we're really in the key of D, and so our E is Dorian, which means we have a major 6. In fact, it's kind of fun to go from one to the other. And, you know, right out of the gate, you can jump over strings, you can go from one to the next. You know, half of it is memorizing the shape, the other half is just having fun and playing around with it. Now, moving up, we can do a similar thing to the very first one I did. So we're going... So moving up here, we'll have another E minor arpeggio. Or you could do... and then we're all the way up here to the 12th fret, and we could go... So we just took the whole fretboard and did just a couple different variations of an E minor. Sometimes some positions will naturally lend themselves to certain arpeggios more than others. Now let's look at some ideas for A7. Now the first one, you know, if we're way down here, kind of starting where we were for the first E minor that we did before, we've got A7 right here. You could play it with your middle finger. We could play it right here. If we want to move up a little more, we could hit our A7 right here on 12th fret of A. And then the last one we'll throw in here, we could go all the way up here to 12th fret and do a really similar kind of thing. Now I'm just mapping these out as options, and then when we get improvising and get playing, we can mix between the pentatonic stuff, running up the fretboard, and then throwing in some of those shapes. Lastly, we'll check out how we can add some extra tension and color to our playing using the 6th diminished scale. A little bit ago I mentioned that we're thinking of the key of D for this E minor to A7 jam. The really quick way to figure that out is that we have an A7. A 7th chord is typically the 5 chord of the key you're playing in. And if we backtrack, we'll find that A is the 5th of D, and therefore we're in the key of D. Although, more on that 7th chord in a minute. The 6th diminished scale just means that you're going to play a major scale, but we're going to add a note in between the 5th and the major 6. And the scale itself in the key of D, I'll just do it right here on the 5th fret of A, will go like this. Now the reason that that can be so helpful in adding some different harmony and color and tension to our playing is that extra note that we added is an A sharp, and that really opens up a ton of possibilities. In the context of this lesson and the playthrough that I did in the beginning of the lesson, really all I was doing was using that A sharp to give myself permission to create an extra dominant chord, and then through that a lot of different diminished options open up as well. So if we think about an A sharp in the context of the key of D, what that does is it means that our 3rd degree, which is Phrygian, which would normally be an F sharp minor in the key of D, it could be an F sharp minor 7 as well. We could put an E in there. That definitely is fair game. But with that A sharp, here's an A sharp on the 3rd fret of the G string. I'm going to add that note, and then all we get is an extra dominant chord. So now, not only do we have an A7 dominant chord in our key of D, but we also have an F sharp 7. Well, the 5th of B minor, which is the relative minor of D, is F sharp. And so what it does is it gives us a dominant chord for our relative minor and a dominant chord for our major. So that's really the long and the short of it. And then we get diminished stuff that wasn't really there before. And it just sounds so beautiful. And it's really very, very natural. I would argue it's even more natural than just the 7-note major scale. It definitely pops up in a ton of music all over the place. Now, just to keep it really simple, all I was really doing in the playthrough, and all I'm going to really talk about right now, is just using that A sharp to now create an extra chord, which will be the F sharp 7 chord. You can do it as diminished 2, or you can do it as F sharp 7. So already that's creating some extra tension. Now there are a bunch of different places we can play an F sharp 7. I'll just show you a couple of the spots I was thinking of it. The one I just did. You could do it there. You can do it up here. So if you think of your pinky finger as the root note, here's an F sharp, and we're just building a dominant chord off of that. Now that's kind of cool because here's an example of how we can connect an A7 to that, and it seems like an unlikely pair, but they actually kind of sound awesome together. Then another spot we can do it is way up here toward the 11th fret. If you think of an F sharp bar chord like this, I'm just going to take the top part of that. Now the reason this is kind of awesome, beyond that it just sounds cool, is that it's really close to our E minor pentatonic. So one thing you can practice is maybe doing like a run up with your minor pentatonic, E minor pentatonic, then to that F sharp 7. So if I'm doing more of an improv kind of thing rather than just mapping that out, it might be... And then I just was kind of riffing off of this shape and then this shape, and then combining it with E minor pentatonic. So maybe try to connect all these different concepts together by downloading the jam track that I made and starting with one of them at a time. You know, maybe do the pentatonic positions, go throughout and see if you can move up and down and get a little flow to it. Then we can connect our different chord shapes for E minor and A7, and then maybe throw in, if you want to get the extra tension and color, the F sharp 7 chord that we were doing, really by way of the 6th diminished scale in the key of D. And then anything else you can think of. You know, half the battle is memorizing some of these shapes and just the rote memorization of it, and then half of it is just getting in there and trying to mix it up and have fun with it. So yeah, take your time with it. Thanks for checking out the lesson. Be sure to download the worksheet and jam tracks in the link below. Don't hesitate if you have any questions at all, and I'll see you next time.